Hello and welcome to the Car Podcast, episode number 33. Two of the Magic Foursome are suffering from certain gastric issues. So if we disappear and leave you with two, we apologise. I don't know why that is, but certainly two of us are not feeling that great. This week, first up, well, two of us were lucky enough to be at the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Are you?
And this
there could be a link between that and your belly.
Amongst the troops, but we'll resolve that next year. It says here, CH, gridwalk and F1 chat. I'm going to be a total softie and say, can we do the F1 chat first, whilst I summon the energy to do the F1 gridwalk experience, which still left me traumatised as I am now. So, first of all, Neil Clifford, did you watch the race?
Oh, Christ. I did, I think. Yeah, I was asked by Manish to watch it to see whether we saw Chris and Luca, which I was very excited. I saw them. Can't really remember what happened. There were a lot of celebrities there. It looks like the celebrity event, doesn't it?
It does.
Unfortunately, Chris and I are not celebrities, so we were at Goodwood. No. Who won? Oh, the McLaren guy. That's right. It was a good race, I think. It wasn't as boring as Japan, but wasn't as good as the one before that.
Yeah.
That's probably my conclusion.
Yeah.
But it was a good McLaren one, although it was the wrong McLaren guy because he's not British. And I don't know
nearly British.
And then George was great. I'm sure everyone will have much better words about George, but George is super cool, and we think he's great. That's about all I can remember. And the Aston Martin Zagato. The Aston Martin Zagato.
Oh wow, that thing! Oh, unbelievable. Okay, so Chris Cooper, thoughts on the race?
Well, I think Neil's given us a very good summary. Lando. What you say about poor old little Lando? He's clearly living his anxieties and his worries in full public glare. And I'm not a sports psychologist or a psychologist or any of those kind of things, but he could just stop worrying about it, Lando. Stop worrying about what you're worrying about. You're brilliant. Just let it all out. Concentrate, focus, but stop worrying about it. Because he seemed to... Is it because he's got such a golden chance and he came into the season as the one everyone was talking about? Zach talked about, we've had the Schumacher era, the Senna era, the Hamilton era. Now we're going to have the Lando Norris era. I mean, that feels quite a heavy burden for him right now, along with all of the other burdens he seems to collect together as assiduously as he drives a Formula One car. So I do worry about him in a rather fatherly sort of concerned way. I think I said in one of the ones earlier on in the season before we started, the chat had last year had been Lando and Max. And I said, it's going to be Lando and Oscar. And right now you'd say, without doing very much other than being brilliant, Oscar is, busting it.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to watch at Jeddah, where confidence, my favorite word when it comes to motor racing, confidence is everything with those walls and how bloody fast it is. So I was driving back from Goodwood. I went to Goodwood on both days. So I was driving back and saw the last bit of it and saw that George was having all of those sort of like an episode from Airplane or something with, Ted Stryker. The engines have fallen off, the wings fallen off, everything's going wrong, and he just lands it and belly flops it over the finishing line together. So it's a bit hilarious, really, isn't it? Because George is being destroyed. Yeah, George had a solid race. Yeah, he's had a solid start to the season. He's doing unbelievably well. Yeah. So I'm a big George fan. I think everyone knows that. So I thought that was good. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I did notice, like Neil said, it does feel like Neil and I aren't acquainted with the Crown Prince Salman in the way that our two other colleagues are, which is why we were NFI'd. But it does appear, even looking from the outside, that it's a big party, a big celebration of the sport. Because Salman, I think most people know, Salman is a big supporter and lover and has great passion for cars and the sport, and he's done a brilliant job in that. So, we'd love to have been there, wouldn't we, Neil?
Oh my God!
But Goodwood was better.
It goes on and on.
Goodwood was better. Yeah.
Manish, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I had a text every 3 minutes from Cooper saying, I'm not invited. Are you invited? Why am I not invited?
Well, I knew I was not invited. I was just reminding that I wasn't.
Literally. Can we just take up, for me, for once, the racing wasn't the centre of the Grand Prix. What was absolutely centre screen for me was the fact that Luca Montezemolo was at a Grand Prix for the first time since September 2014, Monza 2014, 10 years. And I have to say, a few really iconic moments. There was a great moment at dinner on Friday when Luca was sitting at a table which was comprised of 3 tables, and you could see 2/3 of kind of his boys there. Stefano Domenicali right in front of him, just chatting away. Next to Stefano was Mattia Binotto. Andrea couldn't make it that evening. At the other end of the table, you had Piero Ferrari, and at the other end of the table, there was Flavio Briatore, and it was just this Italian table. And you could just, he was so calm, so in control, so kind of like, this is what I do. And then H.H. Salman, I mean, the kind of, those two are friends. They're proper friends. One of them may have been, Mr. Ferrari with a big red heart, but the other one loves his motor racing. And I think he respects Luca. When you see the film that Chris and I have made, you'll see there's a very important chapter in it as to how Formula One finds its way into the Middle East. And I won't spoil that for you, but their friendship goes back, not some commercial arrangement. It goes back to 1999. And when Luca walked through the pit lane on Saturday, he walked with H.H. Salman, and it was just an absolute joy to see the charisma of this man. And, I don't think people think there's a bit of Schadenfreude in him about what's happening with Ferrari. That's bollocks. He loves that company. He didn't rescue it once, he rescued it twice. The boys, so many people that he knows are still there, so much of the infrastructure is still there. And I don't think he takes any joy in needling people, but he's a very, very clever man. He knows how to motivate. Generally, he motivates in a very positive way. But you could see he's really upset. And let's not forget, he was fired by Marchione for underperformance of the Formula One team. That was the exact reason given 11 seasons ago. Since then, they came second with Mattia. He was fired. They've, let's say, had some engine controversies that never really blew up in the press and perhaps the way they should have done. And that's about as close as they've come to a title, with quote unquote engine controversies. And it's been really painful to watch. And actually, it's not good for Formula One. And I think he made a very big comment. He said, why didn't Ferrari sign Antonelli? I mean, why is Toto the guy, the cat with the cream and all the options? Which segues really neatly for me into George Russell. The big thing about George is I think I agree with you. I mean, he's just been flawless. He's come of age. Last year, he put Lewis away. This year, I think he beat Lewis by 33 points, but that was because he was disqualified. So if you add another 25 to that and take away 7 from Lewis, you really see the margin between the two of them last year. And that guy's in a Ferrari. Lewis is in a Ferrari. And I think that, I think quite rightly, Luca said, why isn't Antonelli the best Italian prospect? I think there are 8 English speakers, aren't there, in Formula One? So the best new Italian prospect is, at Mercedes. And I think that really irked him as well. And then my final point's exactly what Mr. Cooper talked about many, many years ago, didn't you? You talked many episodes ago. You talked about the C word, confidence. I'm not a motor racing driver. I can't drive like you and like the two Chris's. But I've been watching for a very, very long time. And you described confidence in such a brilliant way a couple of episodes ago, and how it's actually the critical ingredient. And it's horrible to see that gone from Lando. And it kind of is. There's like a little Bunsen burner flame, which is really low or has even gone out. And he's got to find his mojo. And I spoke to someone yesterday who he's a sportsman. He's actually our head of production, and he used to play cricket for Lancashire. And he said something very profound yesterday. He said, maybe the difference between Lando and Oscar isn't just their curves, isn't just where they are in their development cycle, but Lando has been with the team since it was crawling at the back of the grid. So Lando understands what it is to lose. And he can see that. And this team, we made Grand Prix driver in McLaren's annus horribilis, where they divorced with Honda. Everything went wrong. The once great team came, ninth. And Lando's been through all of that and grown with them, whereas Oscar has come into a team which within 2 seasons, actually a season and a quarter, has started to sing. And he's won everything pretty much out of the box. And maybe one of them has a fear of losing because it's experiential, and the other one has no fear of losing because guess what? He's never lost. And all the magazines now are all about, and all the articles are all about how Piastri is the real deal. He is 100% the real deal. And I don't know whether it's a good problem to have 2 guys who are that good, but I know McLaren people very well. They're not. They're an emotional bunch. It's a real family, that team. And I think I think in a way the hardest possible thing that will happen this year is if Oscar really dominates. I think that will be very tough for the team because Lando's grown up with them. He's been the baby McLaren boy, come through the team, and to have this guy come out, how do you manage that next year? Does Oscar even stay? Does Lewis retire and does Lewis retire and does Lando go to Ferrari? The permutations are kind of endless. But it was an amazing weekend, but there were some very profound things this weekend.
I don't know what to add to that. So, first of all, some observations from the race. George on the softs at the end. I can't believe how he strung it out. It was so impressive. Lewis, in that second stint when he had the medium on, switched the car on in a way we've not seen really all year. Yeah. And it gave me a bit of hope. He just took the language of the car. I was watching the timing screens. He was really quick. And I don't know whether they were playing Jeopardy with the ride height or whatever it was, but he was on a tyre that was parity and he was really fast. And so that was really good to watch. It's always funny watching it trackside because you remind yourself that it's normally better watching it on telly because you can see more. It's quite nice to hear the cars, but I always find myself ducking back in to find a screen because that's just it's where you want to be. You feel such a fraud and so ungrateful, but ultimately, if you want to watch the action and understand how the race unfolds with strategy and other things, you sort of need a screen. You can't just do it trackside, or you can do it with an app maybe. I thought Oscar was utterly peerless. It was totally dominant. I've read a lot since, and Andrea Steller's given a few interviews where he talks about the fact that it's very cryptic, but he's saying there is a specific change that's happened to the car, and Lando's style doesn't suit it, but he knows that Lando will overcome that, and all will be good. And I don't, he's not a bullshitter, that man. He's the most straight talking of all the team principals, probably. I'm not saying the others aren't, but there's something about him that is. You think that he would just faint if he had to tell an untruth. He's got something about it that's very straightforward. So I have to hope that's the case. But yeah, Lando, he just didn't look like he was ever going to get anywhere near Oscar. Oscar's domination was pretty profound, actually. When they had that second safety car, or the safety car at the end, and he just maybe the demonstration or the test of a dominant race is if you can cock off into the distance after a safety car like that, you really are a different league, aren't you?
It's interesting what you say about McLaren's commentary on Lando's driving style. I was very struck by the candor and honesty of Lewis at the end of the race and how open he actually was about, I've had to change how I drive the car. He said he made quite a specific reference to for nerds like us, which is really interesting, about engine braking. The Ferrari clearly relies for its speed on using engine braking, i.e. using the gears to help retardation, I suspect a bit of rotation as well. And he said, I've never driven that way. I've never used engine braking. And I think, anybody who's driven a car in any sort of semi-serious way, I think that's quite a big difference in your muscle memory as to how you do it. And it struck me this year, in particular how, because Chris and I played at racing, really. We've loved the moments we've had in the sun, but we've played at it. But both Chris and I have had moments where we've had somebody in our ear, an engineer in our ear, when we've been saying, I can't get turn 2 and 3. It just won't turn in. And the bloke's just said, adapt your driving style. And you think, adapt the car. How about having to go at that first? And you end up having this argument going around Spa, it's usually Spa, about that. And I thought, it's not just us. It's not just mere mortals. It's the gods. And I was really struck by how much of an issue that had been for Lewis. And you could sort of have a bit of sympathy for Carlos at Williams and maybe Liam at Red Bull. But yeah, it's very... And for Lando as well. It's been very interesting to get that insight for nerds like us. Brilliant.
Because when you see the cars up close, you realise that they're so big and they look so complicated. They look difficult to drive when they're static to me. You think, how on earth do you see out of them? I can't believe they can all arrive at turn 1 at a race circuit and not just wipe each other out. It's very skillful. I'll tell you about the grid walk then. So I managed to get onto the grid walk. There was lots of, behind the scenes organising going on, as there always is with these things. But I have to say, I'm still slightly traumatised by the whole bloody thing now. You wait in a tunnel and it's hot there, and you sort of get released like sheep going out into a new field, and everyone sort of ducks and goes where they want to go, and actually it's quite difficult. If you're my height, you don't really see much beyond people's chests, so I'm at a disadvantage. I'm not a Neil Clifford or a Chris Cooper. I don't see above people. I'm looking at their sort of solar plexuses, really. So it's difficult to know where you're going. So I knew that I had to find Luca and maybe get near Martin Brundle. That was the idea. It wasn't totally pre-arranged, but it was suggested that if I managed to engineer that situation, there might be a chance to talk about this little film that we've made. And within 5 minutes, I sort of gave up hope because I couldn't find Luca anywhere. And I was running around going, where's Luca, to total strangers and Formula One teams who would sort of shrug and go, aren't you the bloke that used to be on Top Gear? And I sort of scuttled around. I eventually found Luca, who was walking with lots of important people. And I thought the best thing I can do is to shadow him. So I'll shadow him, but I don't want to be in the shot because there was a camera on him the whole time. He was the guest of honour. And I don't want to be in the shot. So I sort of lurked to one side thinking, well, look at that lens. I think I'll be out of the way. And I followed him to the front of the grid. And two things struck me. One, the grid is not a great place if you struggle with sort of being knocked out of the way or you're in any way sensitive about body contact, because it was like a scrum and I was unprepared for that. The other one was that when he walked past the Ferrari mechanics, he stopped and he shook their hands and he clapped them, which was really, really lovely. He didn't need to do that. And they loved it. And there was a lovely moment of connection. He also had a nice chat with Christian Horner, which was good as well. And then he got to the front and suddenly I managed to see Martin and I was going, waving at him. And he came over and he gave us the most wonderful, fortuitous 30 seconds where Luca could say something kind and I could mention the film, and also I could celebrate how much of a hero he is for me. And I will say this, it feels really special to be a part of that grid walk. And if you're too grizzled and old to not celebrate that, you've lost it. I loved the result of being on there, and I loved the fact that so many of my friends went, "Way, it's great to see you on the grid walk." That was really lovely. But the grid walk itself is a bit of a scrum. You got to get your elbows out more than I expected. But I will tell you, I'm so pleased that it's a box ticked. I never thought I'd be on there. The two things in the sporting world I thought I'd never do were be a guest on Test Match Special, and I've done that, and be on the grid walk. And I suppose if my late daddy could see me now, he might go, "You're not as much of a loser as I thought you were." Well, I'm quietly quite chuffed with that. That's the end of my grid walk explanation.
Can I just say that, isn't it wonderful? I mean, you have a bit more of an appreciation for what Martin does week in, week out, because it looks so bloody easy. He floats on, Flavio, he does that. He is shoving past people. The cameraman's following him. They're trying to time it. He's got a schedule of people that he hopes he's going to be able to catch. I mean, it's a fantastic, and that's why I can't stand it when people are rude or offhand or standoffish with him, because the effort it requires to produce that 10 minutes of entertainment it's just immense, and he does it just so well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an unashamed Martin Brundle obsessive. I think he's the best sports broadcaster by He happens to represent my sport. I feel very lucky. But yeah, I spent a bit of time talking to him. He is the boss. He is the boss. He really is the best.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for giving me 30 seconds, Martin.
Well, the good news is that Lando's going to win this week in Saudi, isn't he? On the basis of our prediction qualities. Yeah. Let's hope so.
Will.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Next up, simple one. Our week in cars. Neil Clifford, you've always got something going on with cars. What have you done this week?
Well, I was in Lake Como. I came back. I went to Goodwood, I suppose. I went to Goodwood straight away on the Saturday and got back on the Friday night. And you know what? Goodwood's always the same, and it's always brilliant. And it's bless my wife. She always says to me, "Oh, darling, do I have to come? Because it's always the same." And I'm like, "That's the point.
Yes.
It's always the same. That's why I like it, because it's always wonderful." And it's the same people, which is fabulous. And it's always sunny because old Lord March has, a direct contact to God on the weather. Lovely and warm, blue sky. I've got to know a few people, which is really wonderful. Being able to chat to legends like Dario Franchitti in the pits. And it's my social gymnasium. I don't really care, the wonderful cars, and I can talk for hours about the cars and the races, and I don't really care that much about it. So I just love the place. I was born near there, as you know. I remember it being derelict. Old Charlie March has done such a wonderful job, and just bombing about, coffee, laughter, cars, sunshine, people, perfection.
Manish, what was your week with cars?
So, Lola is at Joe Macari's. This is my week with cars. And apparently the boot switch and the petrol fuel cap switches have gone. So they're changing those. They recommend upgrading the brake lines. That's not super urgent. And the front brake discs may need a little bit of looking at. Again, that's not super urgent. And I think we're kind of there. I've got a little bit of a fear of God in me about week of cars. On Sunday evening after the race, at a party, a very nice man called Charlie came up to me and said, "I love the pod." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Oh, I love the pod. And I especially love your stories of Lola because I have a 456M that I bought from a website, from an auction site that perhaps we had some familiarity with."
Collecting cars. He bought it on collecting
Yes,
cars.
collecting cars. Okay. So he said to me that it was driving pretty well. He had a few ancillaries go. But what's been keeping me awake at night is 3 of his electronic control units have gone. And he's been quoted something like 5,000 quid for those.
Sounds cheap. Sounds cheap to me.
Probably each then.
You should buy them now before we go up.
Probably 5,000 each. So what's happening is every time I asymptotically, psychologically approach the idea that I'm going to be able to pick up this car and drive her and not worry too much, someone says, she's now 25 years old. How many computers have you got that are 25 years old that are working perfectly? So my week in cars has been mostly not sleeping, thinking about...
The most important thing is go and drive it around. The more you don't drive it, the more it will go wrong.
Yeah.
I should be able to pick her up this weekend. That's the plan. I'm hoping actually tomorrow.
Then just go and drive to John Groves for the sake of it.
No,
I will.
maybe a
I will.
small
Good idea.
I ought to just make sure that we've all noted there that I'm not sure this has happened before. You've introduced the word asymptote to the lexicon of our podcast, which I think is a small moment of congratulation there, Manish.
Thank you very much.
In the sea of otherwise financial ruin and disaster and misery.
Well, that wasn't to explain myself here. Can someone tell me what that means, please?
It means when you approach a line, but you never quite reach it. So if I'm heading towards you and I keep halving the distance between you and me, if we start at a meter, then it becomes 50 centimeters. Then I move another 25, then I move another 12 and a half, and so on. I'll never reach you. I will never reach you.
You know, all those
That's
apexes you've missed, Chris. It's a bit like that.
Do you know what? That's your worst ever stepping on. He didn't get to say what it was.
Very
Manage to say what it was, please. That's extraordinary, Cooper. And I'll use that as an example in the future.
It's a bad man. It's a bad man.
You got to 12 and a half, then I can't halve it because I'm not stupid. What is
6.25. So the whole point is you're getting closer and closer and closer to a line, but you never reach that line. And that is what an asymptote is. It's approaching. So with Lola, I think perfection, even when she was made, was probably unlikely.
Can it be a verb?
Yes.
I suppose to asymptote. I don't know if you can.
No.
Okay.
I think so. I think it's.
I've learned something. I love it. I learned so many things on this podcast.
It sounds just like life, that, doesn't it? Life is that. You just have to enjoy the journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chris Cooper, what have you done this week?
I had a lovely week in cars. So on Tuesday or Wednesday, there was a track day at Silverstone that I was invited to by a kind, generous friend of mine. And it was all kinds of different, it was quite a gentle track day. There were one or two people with GT3 race cars there, but mostly it was a whole range of, gentle cars and gentle folk. Lovely day, cold but sunny. It was all lovely. My mate, Rob Garofal, racing driver Rob, who's the guy who drives all of the McLaren stuff, was there. And he was there with his boss, a chap called Piers Thin. Do you know Piers Thin, Manish?
Well, yes. Yeah.
So he's the chief operating officer of McLaren. He runs the factory. And he was just
can't
about...
be fat, can he, with that name?
No. He's not.
It just wouldn't work, would it?
No, it wouldn't. I'm presuming Manish's dad was Sheridan Thin.
He was, yes.
Yeah, he was a very famous...
Man. Great
very
man.
famous
Worked for Frank
commercial
Williams for many years.
Yeah, big friend of Frank's and big and Piers was racing or testing or track daying a pre-66 Mini, which he has an interest in, which I thought was fantastic. That here's this guy at the peak of our sport in a little track day in the middle of the week before he had to jump on the plane the following day to go to Bahrain with this beautiful, like the one I've got, pre-66 Mini. So we were talking really nerdy things about pre-66 Minis. How much we have to pay for engine rebuild. And there's a big race, there's a mini festival taking place at Brands Hatch in Kent, in England-Leicestershire, later on this year, where it's just for pre-66 Minis, run by SwiftTune, organised by SwiftTune. So Piers will be there. All the glitterati of mini racing will be there. Nick Swift and all his Super Duper drivers, and Piers and me somewhere down the middle, all back. So if you're in England-Leicestershire in August, come and see us there. Neil said everything about Goodwood, which is lovely and true. It is. I had a lovely drive there. For some of you who know southern England, the M25, the Ring of Misery, there's a lot of roadworks going on. So I went in a different road down the M3, and I missed the turn-off to go through to back to the A3. So I had a beautiful drive across Hampshire, eventually getting towards Peterborough. It was a beautiful morning. Cameron and I went together. It was a lovely drive through English countryside at its best. Nice roads, some extraordinarily good driving behaviour. Not everybody going to Goodwood, but it was one of those mornings where people were driving really well, enjoying their cars, respecting everybody else. So when I got to Goodwood, my sense of well-being was already at sort of tip-top level. So, and Neil's right. We go there and we're enjoying it before we get there because we know what it's going to be like. And that's how we enjoy it. The enjoyment starts when you wake up in the morning thinking, how do you know this is going to be great? There's no uncertainty. God forbid they've changed anything. We can't cope with that. Don't do change. So I met Robert Denton, who was on our podcast 2 weeks ago, who was great fun. Very, very happy.
Fun with him.
Yeah, I saw the photographs you posted of you and you together. So I bumped him a couple of times. He was in great form. He hugely appreciates everybody's support for him after his car was very unhappily nicked and bashed about. So yeah, it was great. The weather was very nice. So the car parks were a dust bowl rather than a mud bath, which is sort of slightly odd, really. I kind of think it should be a mud bath in April in England. Anyway, so it was lovely. So cars are great, and he just had a look from Silverstone to Goodwood and the lovely drive there and back. Wonderful.
Lovely. I like the sound of that. I had an interesting week with cars. I drove some ordinary stuff. I've swapped, or BMW has swapped the M5 I've been using for M5 Touring, so I'm going to update you on that. Basically, no surprises, I prefer the Touring because it looks so much better, and I love estate cars. But on Wednesday last week, I drove into Gloucestershire to the home of McMurtry, the wonderful, clever people from my part of the world that make the Spearling, which is to most people the bullet that goes up the hill at Goodwood at a speed that none of us can comprehend. It looks like it's a Benny Hill sketch, doesn't it? It's just not right. And I was present, and you'll see the video up already. I was present when Tom, the boss, CEO, and co-founder of the business, drove the car upside down. Now, I'm not aware this has ever happened before, and he only drove it about 2 feet. But he drove the car upside down, no magnets, no nothing. It was sucking itself using its crazy fans and downforce to a steel plate. And they flipped the plate upside down, and then Tom drove it forwards. And I was there during the preparation for this stunt, and you'll see my video on Sunday night. I was there for the preparation, but nothing prepares you when you actually see something that looks so foreign. Because I think the upside-down car is one of those weird things that we all dreamed about as children. You'd often, if you had your toy car, you'd go, I've got an upside-down car now. You'd run it against the ceiling, or you'd run it against something that was upside down to demonstrate how absurd this concept was. And to actually see it happen, and it was only a couple of feet, was much more mind-scrambling than I'd imagined. And I filmed it. I sort of selfied it on my phone, and I'll put the video up. And I'm really glad that I did, because it was something that in advance I would have thought, well, once he's done it, let's go home. But in practice, when I saw it, I thought, oh my Lord, I'm not sure anyone's ever seen that before.
It is quite an incredible thing.
It slightly affected me. And I love the fact there are a bunch of just passionate, intelligent, capable engineers that live so close to me that made that happen. You know, they're so far beyond anything I can do. So to the whole team, congratulations to Tom. I'm so glad that you did it, and also you deserve to get thrown in the pond afterwards. But as a celebration, it was all really, really special, and it made me. I went away thinking, right, we've got to make a tube track that you can do upside down laps and up, the right way up laps. And also, I got an issue which I'll share with you now, and I won't solve it or conclude it. But downforce for me is the process of using wings or suction or something that allows the car to push itself into the surface of the ground. But if it's the ceiling, is that still downforce? Because it's not pushing it down, is it? It's actually pushing it up.
It's not downforce.
What would you call that? Would it not be upside down force?
No, it's suction, not downforce.
There's no such thing as suction in physics.
The corollary is downforce, isn't it?
Well, it's.
When we talk about downforce, we're not saying it's downforce generated by speed driven over a wing or a negative cavity underneath the car that creates a pressure difference.
It's a pressure difference.
Yeah, but we're not deciphering how you create the downforce. And the thing about the Mercury is it produces all its downforce at 0 miles an hour. It's still downforce. And if it's pushing down on a surface, it's downforce. But if it's pushing up on a ceiling, is that?
Well, it's if yeah. I was going to go
upside down.
I lost you, Neil.
I'm just wondering if it's actually a hovercraft.
Very good.
It's reversal.
No, it's an amazing thing.
My week in cars was
I'm looking to know Max Chilton.
Event.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really, really cool.
It's a great thing. So next, this is a difficult one for me. This is Neil Clifford. I'm going to hand this over to you. The colour white.
Ooh. I like white cars, and I wish I had more of them. To me, it's I think all of this moment, which I'm involved in, I suppose, of green great again, and then it became brown, and then it became purple, and navy blue. I think the world's going to go back to sort of the cleanness of white. I think if you were ahead of the curve and you had lucky enough to have an ST, I'd have it in white. White with white wheels. I'd replicate the sort of ice cool 4-litre 997 GT3 RS. To me, I suppose it's about Japanese cars. I think white is about Japan a bit, isn't it? All of the coolest cars you see that have been imported from Japan, they're often whites. That Honda, what would it be? The Type R 1990s car with the red Recaro and the titanium gear knob. I think that's sort of peak white for me. It also, what it also say to me? Yeah, you don't really care about the colour. You don't really care about your image. You don't really care about what people think of you. You've just bought an amazing car and you've ordered it in white. I think there's a purity to that decision, which I think is really good. It's also, it must be the case, because when you land in Dubai, 80% of the cars are white. So it may be from a heat perspective.
Yeah.
It must be true that white cars are much better in hot climates. So I really like white cars. I think they're underloved.
If I gave you, Neil, absolute empirical evidence of the fact that if you ordered a certain car in white, it would lose £10,000 more over 2 years, would you still be brave enough to order it in white?
I would, because I don't really sell cars very often. I should do more of it. But I don't. I suppose we've all got caught up in that sort of, oh my God, have I got PTS? If I haven't got PTS, is it worth actually ordering the car at all? That sort of frenzy that we've had in the last 5 or 10 years. I think I sense that moment's going to change a bit. I think we should sort of pare it back a little bit. And I suppose I'm thinking particularly about white Porsche, because I think white Porsche. And when you see a white 993, which frankly is very rare because they're all bloody blue, aren't they, or black? It looks brilliant. A white 993 C2. I mean, actually, that would be worth more than a blue or black one, probably not.
Manish, how do you feel about the colour white? Not terribly strongly, if I'm honest. I know that in Formula One, it was always considered very pure. Brabhams from in Bernie's time were always basically white with some navy blue. You always loved a very lovely bright white car. I sort of slightly think of the white Countach in Miami Vice. You think of white exotics, you kind of imagine they're going to be much more likely to be in Florida or California or the Middle East, as you've just said. That's where I've seen the majority of white exotics, Middle East. They buy them, but they also buy them in white. And it's a colour that for me looks right in very, very bright sun. It's an odd colour otherwise. I think in Britain, it's white cars, they converge on being grey most of the year. I would imagine in summer, it's a lovely colour. I think Neil's spot on. The Toyota in James Bond, in You Only Live Twice, 2000. The one I think it's got big eyes. That looks fantastic in white.
Yeah, it's a Japanese colour.
Yeah. Yeah, Japanese cars. That's what I would say about white. I personally don't ever really see myself in a white car. I've seen one picture of a Berlinetta Boxer in white. It was white at the top, white at the bottom. It looked... Yeah. Is that your car, Neil? No, it's not.
Well, no, but this is the uniform of when you go to an airport, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, private eye, classic cars.
That is when you're here.
Oh, look at that.
Oh. Where are you going, by the way?
Lovely day to fly.
I'm working in America for 48 hours. But that is the key, isn't it?
That's it.
Maybe a little bit of luck.
He's holding up classic and sports car, motorsport, and private eye, which is exactly what he should be reading. He's
ready to fly.
Yeah, ready to fly. Yeah.
Chris Cooper, where do you stand on the colour white?
Ooh, I think it's the most divisive and flip-floppy colour for me. It almost died in the UK, certainly, in the trade, as those professionals and sometimes semi-professionals indulge in the buying and selling of motor vehicles, describe themselves. In the early 2000s, it almost died out. You thought, oh, it's a white car, forget it. I'll pay you to take it away. It had completely died as a colour. If somebody said, tell me what the first thing comes into your mind when somebody says white car, fast Fords.
Yeah.
Fast
Yeah.
Fords. Sierra Cosworth in particular. Those launched Sierra Cosworths. And they were launched, I remember reading it it probably would have been Fastlane and Motor Magazine and Performance Car in the mid-80s. And the press cars were white. And it was launched somewhere in Spain, and these wonderful pictures that we all got completely sucked in by in magazines in those days of these huge skies, not a cloud in sight. You could tell how hot it was from looking at the colours of the ground and the glinting on, and it was a white. I think that is what it should be. So Sierra Cosworth, the original, has always got to be white. It does feel like in the UK, a white car is going to look dirty. It's not a good look. In a hot country, it's going to look dusty. Good look. Yeah. Dirty, bad, dusty, good. It's kind of how I see it. So if you're in the south of France, we could talk. We may talk about our favourite roads in France a bit later if we get time. Everything it says about them is it's dusty. It's always dusty. White cars just look cool when they're dusty. So hot country, fast forwards. Humanitarian missions. Yep, white. Land Cruiser. What is cooler than a white Land Cruiser?
On Steelies,
white Land Cruiser is just brilliant. Yeah. So would I have one?
A police rover.
Police cars. Yeah. It's interesting. We, Chris and I and lots of, some others who listen to this, we've had the great privilege of driving factory-produced racing cars from Porsche in particular. Years ago,
I didn't know you'd done that.
No, I should mention it more. You're right. I should do.
Yeah.
If only I had a platform to do that one.
Weekly one.
Brutal.
They would arrive in white. Now they don't. They arrive in silver. You buy a GT3 Cup car or a Cayman Sprint car, they arrive in silver now. And I think a little bit of me died when I saw that. So that made me think white is good.
I like white cars, and I feel guilty that I haven't bought or owned more because I really love it as a colour. Two observations about white cars. One, if you look at particular models of vehicles over time, take a Porsche GT3, for example, you're aware of how fickle our relationship with white is in the UK. So a 996 Gen 1 GT3, you won't find any white ones, there might be a couple. On the Gen 2, you might find some. On the 997 Gen 1, there were loads of white cars because the communications car was white. And after that, just a few RSs might be white, but it sort of died a death. It's so fickle how they're ordered. They come in batches for a year or two, and then it becomes almost like a death to have a white one. And I looked at it a bit, there's no real strategy to it. There's no rhyme or reason. It just happens. I remember white was so unfashionable. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, Evo put a white 996 GT3 Gen 2 on the cover. A rear shot, probably with Dickie Mead sliding it within an inch of where it needs to be. It was an amazing shot. And I remember thinking, that car now looks twice as appealing as it did in any other colour.
Yeah.
Why not? Well, I couldn't understand why there weren't more white ones. So that's one side of it. White is white. We don't treat white fairly. We are not consistent towards the colour white. We owe it an apology. The other side to white that is amazing when you see white lined up is there's no such thing as white. Every car maker has an interpretation of white, and it really is, it's the colour that gets bent more in the area of cream or brilliant white or whatever, an approximation in the middle, a slaty colour. And there's so many different whites. I can't think of whether there is a standardised white or not. The Japanese whites we're talking about often have a very creamy, like the Integras have a sort of cream to them. And I remember seeing a few cars together in a car park at a race circuit, and they were white, and I thought, they almost look like different colours. They were such a variance of a white.
And I think in the paint to sample little thing on the configurators, that kind of little sort of slightly grey-y, crayony white, do you think we could lobby for it to be called asymptotic white? It doesn't quite get towards white.
He's
not white.
Manish,
not quite white.
Do that on his head on my screen. It's fine. To answer your question, no, but it's fascinating how car makers have their version of white. In fact, the whitest white for me is probably Porsche's Grand Prix white. That's a very white. But if you park that next to an Integra Type R from 1996 with the red seats, it will look like gold top milk. The Integra will.
Yeah.
Creamy. Yeah.
You go, whoa, is that white? What is it? So I love white cars. My father's 323i JAE 660X, which was stolen from Heathrow Airport while we were on holiday, was probably my favourite of all of his cars. It was a white 323i E21. It was a gorgeous car. So
I remember when I was at university, this friend, I think I mentioned him before, he had the Esprit Turbo, and he had the body finished at Tickford, and it was a pearl white. I've just remembered it. Dark blue suede interior. This white was the only word for it's iridescent. You would see it in the sun or in any other light. The depth of the white. I mean, it was pearl. It was like looking at a pearl. Every single surface on this car looked just very slightly different, slightly more dense in places, slightly lighter in others. And it just had a sheen to it. I never saw that car dirty, actually. Never saw that car. I just remember it as a sunny car, even in England in the 80s. Very beautiful machine.
I think because we're kids of the 70s more than the 60s, the James Bond for me is Roger Moore, and therefore that Lotus was a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. There's also a practical side to white, which is cars by their very existence have to have bumpers that are often black and glass surrounds which are black, and the contrast provided by white paintwork often sets that off in a better way for me. It's a lovely contrast, and particularly 80s Porsches like a 3.2 Carrera in white is it's a really beautiful thing actually, and there's not many of them. So
I mean, the RX 1600, would it be Mark II? No, Mark III, I suppose.
The front wheel drive one.
The Escort. The white and black of that with the black 1600 sticker on the back. That was a cool car.
Yeah. Escort RS Turbo could only really be in white.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to move this on to, as Chris Cooper alluded, what's your favourite French road? Let's go first with Chris Cooper, because he was mentioning it a second ago.
I mean, there's just so many to choose from. If we did this every week, we'd have a different road. But there is a road that has, and I choose it because it makes me happy. And it's the D558 that goes from the A8 in the south of France down through La Garde Freinet all the way to Grimaud and sort of basically the Bay of Saint-Tropez. So it goes from sort of that beautiful Autoroute du Soleil and the sort of faster, and it sort of weaves up the hill and gets to the top of the hill at La Garde Freinet, which is a beautiful old medieval town. And it's the sight lines. French country roads have got a nice bit of camber, so they make you feel like a much better driver than you are, and they make your car feel like a much better car than it actually is. So you could drive almost anything and you think you're a god, because the things you feel, the weight through your hands, the balance through your seat of your pants, just feels better. They're super smooth. And they've got that lovely sort of geometric, there's a lock, and then there's a lock, and there's a lock, and it just feels wonderful and celebrates everything about driving a car that we love. The scenery's lovely. When you go down the hill from La Garde Freinet towards Grimaud, it's a little bit more open, a bit faster. And there's a bit more of that, sometimes you get that sort of, like a bit of runoff area at the side of some of those French roads. It's not a cycle lane, it's just a bit of extra tarmac. So if you do get it slightly wrong, there's a little bit of runoff, like a little mini Silverstone you can start to use and recover a bit of dignity. And on the road back down into Grimaud, you can start to see the Bay of Saint-Tropez and all that loveliness of those hill towns and Ramatuelle and Gassin. There's lovely places down there which are just so lovely in the summer. It's just a sense of well-being, and any car will feel great. You've got a nice car and a car that's good to drive, it feels even better. And there's nothing like that anywhere else in the world to me, those wonderful French roads in south of France. So the D558.
I totally agree. When you reacquaint yourself with a French road, as I did 2 weeks ago, it's impossible not to conclude that the people that define the roads loved driving. They must have loved driving. They understood that what good radii do for the enjoyment of driving. I can't separate the two. There must be someone going, I love driving.
Exactly that.
Manish, what do you think? What's your favourite road in France?
So my universal set of this is a little bit smaller than yours, but oddly, Mr. Cooper's just hit it. I was just going the other way. If you go from, I remember this drive because a friend invited me, but it was Hotel de Cap to Monaco on the A8. Just go north, and it takes you along the coast. Then just before you hit Nice, you go north, and you go above Nice, then you come back down. Yes. And then you do this left and you suddenly arrive in Monaco and the coast is to your right. I remember the very, very first time I did it. I've done this a few times. It was in the evening and we'd been invited to dinner at the Hotel de Paris. And I just had this kind of, oh my gosh, it's my first time in Monaco. And obviously, there was a certain driver that I was thinking about a lot. This was in 1999. And, literally, as you take that left turn and you see the harbour on your right and you suddenly realise, gosh, I think I may be on the track now, but you're going the other way. Tina Turner's You're Simply the Best just came on the radio totally by chance that night. And that's kind of the song that he's best remembered for, because when he won in Adelaide in 1993, Tina Turner was in concert. He was a massive Tina Turner fan. So she dragged him onto the stage, and he's really shy, wearing this peach-coloured sweatshirt and his little Nacional cap on. And I think he was quite a shy guy, and there are 30,000 people at this Tina Turner concert. And she said, you know who this is, right? It's Serna, right? And then she made him stand there as she sang You're Simply the Best to him.
Wow.
And it's just this, it's a massive moment. And I just remember coming into Monaco that night, just A8, above Nice, Nice to your right, all those lights. Then you come down the hill, turn left, coast on your right, into Monaco. Tina Turner, You're Simply the Best. Best road experience for me in France ever.
Neil, that's a bit difficult for you because I think you've covered a lot of French roads in your time.
No, I haven't really. I bloody feel like going to do that, what Manish just explained. You explained it so wonderfully, Manish, that I'm like, shit, I need to go back to South France. Mine's slightly different. I'm stretching it a little bit. Mine's a journey more than a road, because there's 2 or 3 roads that connect this journey. But it's the road to classic Le Mans. Yeah. It's the journey from Calais, and meeting your mates at the Flexi Plus at ridiculous o'clock, and driving out of that tunnel, and you finally got there, and you haven't forgotten your passport, and you've got the right code to put into the machine, and you've got your sticker thing that now sticks on the windscreen and doesn't have to go round the little mirror thing.
Hanger.
Yeah, no, it's a sticker now. It's better.
I know, it's good.
Just peel it, and then you've remembered your blipper, and that massive anxiety of joy, which I can never lose. Which is it's not that nice a feeling, but I'm excited, but I'm nervous, and I'm excited and nervous for everybody because I'm probably the one that's organised it. Mostly, I've coordinated all the mad cats of friends, and I've got everyone there on time. And then you come out of the tunnel, you're straight on the motorway, and you're already anxious. Are we going to go the right way? Are we going to end up in Paris by mistake or some fuck up? And then someone needs fuel, and you're like, fuck. And then you was a Rouen, then at Alençon, and then you start to see the little road signs to Le Mans, and you're like, yes. This is going to be a great weekend, and you've got everyone there, and that feeling of anxiety because you worry about everyone else, whether they're enjoying it to the point where you're not enjoying it as much as you should be yourself. So you've got to sort of shake that off.
I see everybody in the mirror and everything. Yeah,
is everyone okay, and is everyone enjoying themselves? And but once you start to see those Le Mans signs, you're like, great, we've done it, we've made it. That's my favourite road stroke journey, and we're really trying. Post-COVID, it's been really difficult to coordinate male events we all got shattered into little pieces, didn't we, in the pandemic? And we're trying to put it all back together a little bit. And it's whether we're older or I don't know what it is. But anyway, we've nailed, I think, 5 or 6 of us going to Classic Le Mans. Actually, it doesn't really matter even if Classic Le Mans not on. You only want to go around the pits for 3 hours. We're often home before the race is finished. It doesn't really give a shit. It's just the journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sense of freedom, and you're away from the shackles of, this life that we live a little bit for 2 or 3 days. So, yeah, that's my thing.
I mean, yeah, I want to go on all of your journeys at the moment. I might just stop and go now. But 25 years ago, I was as francophile as I've ever been in my life. I loved France. I spent every holiday there. I always drove to France or through France, mostly to a particular part of the south of France. But I'd go. I roamed around enough to have an appreciation of the fact that I thought their roads were the best in the world. And then I haven't spent as much time there latterly. I spent a lot more time in Italy. And I've fallen in love with Italy in a way that Manish has seen and Chris has seen and Neil has seen. That area, Bologna especially, is just, it's a sensational city. The food's wonderful. The cars are wonderful. The people are wonderful. But the roads, they're just not that good. And you have to go back to France and spend some time there to realise how utterly blessed the French are.
Yeah.
They are just, the surfaces are incredible. The country's huge. They go on and on and on. And they just seem to be perfect. They're the best roads in the world. I really believe they are the best roads in the world. Not just the autoroutes, but the N roads and the D roads. And I'm going to choose probably, I've got lots of favourites down there, but there's a road that comes off the famous N85, which is the route Napoleon that links Grasse and Grenoble. It's called the D21. I've written about it before, actually. It's if you get there, don't expect fireworks. It's a great driving road. And I've driven it in everything from a crappy little hatchback to supercars and hypercars. And I defy anyone not to love this road and the way that it charts the course through really challenging countryside. And again, it's inconceivable that this wasn't defined by someone that loved driving, that some chief engineer went, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because I think it'll be nicer for the next 8 generations of people that come down this road than if I do something more boring. There's a joy to the way that it's laid out. It sounds a bit sensationalist, but it really is. And I was down there a few weeks ago filming for something that will come out soon, and I saw such different traffic. We were in a very fancy Porsche, but I saw everything from locals hacking along in 205s at speeds that you can't really compute to very powerful motorcycles. But I saw one young chap who came past us on the side of the road. We were just taking some detail shots, and he was on a 50cc restricted motocross bike, and he came past on the back wheel and wheelied, and he did the noisiest, slowest wheelie I've ever seen for about 200 yards, and he was at that point the happiest man in the northern hemisphere of this planet. It was joyous. He was just happy and he viewed it as his road. And I think when you feel you've got an emotional ownership of a road, that's a connection that only people like us that have our affliction can really understand. That it's like, this is my road, not my racetrack. It's my road. I love this. That bloke on the back wheel absolutely was convinced that was his road. And I who am I to disagree? It looked like his road where I was sitting.
It's interesting that the comparison, the contrast between Italian roads and French roads. It's almost as if Italians thought, we've given you all these cars. What else do you want?
Yeah.
French didn't have that.
Sort of annoying because,
And that, you're right. Yeah. It's almost as if the road engineers in France said, look at this scenery. How good can we make this? People will come here and they'll remember what it felt like to drive on our roads, whatever they've got.
Yeah. I do remember that Romans probably have a bit of a genetic memory. They like their straight lines. Maybe the French just understand a curve a bit better.
Yeah.
Asymptotic or otherwise.
Asymptotic.
Oh my God. Yeah. Are we going to do favourite automatic gear lever or not?
We're running quite tight on time because Neil needs to go at some point. So I could carry that forward.
Let's do a 2-car garage, which I'm going to make up on the spot, okay? You're going to the Goodwood members meeting, and you're taking a friend, and you're lending him a car or her a car. You have £50,000 to spend for the 2 cars, and one of them has to have been built before 1970. What are you going to go for? I'm going to put Chris Cooper straight on the spot.
I'm glad I took a lot of photographs at Goodwood on Sunday, so I can do this for everybody if you'd like. Do you know what? I just at random, because there were some lovely cars there. Lavant Bank parking. It's some special parking you got to book in advance along the side of the Lavant Strait between Lavant Corner and Goodwood. So, actually, this is in some other part, but that was there. It was a beautiful blue 2-door classic Range Rover. I think that would just about sort of qualify. And then I would have, do you know what? I saw one of these, and this is actually on Lavant Bank. It's the Mark I Triumph 2.5 PI Estate. It's the Mark II, which has got sort of that stag style front end, was slightly nice looking. But that car there, 1960s, mid-late 60s, that car, maybe late 60s. What a cool thing. Nothing said Goodwood more than that car to me. So those two cars, that's what I would do.
Love it. Neil, what are you going to go for?
Oh, crikey. Even though they're sort of slightly shit, I do love an MGB.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it was my first posh car, really. I had a Roadster on a G-Reg. Maybe I can stretch to an MGC, be it that they're probably nowhere near as good as the B, but I always was jealous of that lump in the bonnet.
6-cylinder engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can probably get a really, really good one for like 20 grand or something, can't you? Like a really pucker MGC Roadster.
Yeah.
I think they did a Roadster as well, didn't they? Chrome
And a GT,
bumper.
yeah, both, yeah.
An early MGC Roadster. So that's I think that just cuts me under 1970. And then what else I'm going to do? I really do love a bloody old Mercedes. What could I get for 30 grand? An old Mercedes. Maybe a bit. I'll go a bit off piece. The 450 SLC manual. Really niche thing. I prefer the manual Mercedes than the automatics, and they don't. They go for less money, so you always get a bit of a cheaper car. Unless you've got a massive engine, I'm not a big lover of an automatic. So 450 SLC, you look a bit like a sort of an American 70s private investigator in silver with blue velour with a massive sunroof. They had a really big sunroof, didn't they, on those cars? And I think you'd probably nick both of those for just under 50.
You could.
Yeah.
You could take the Merc on the Safari Rally then afterwards, because that was a fantastic.
Yeah,
that won the Safari Rally, wasn't it? Hannu Mikkola won it, or Bjorn Valdal?
That was the V8 one. No, that was the 450 5-litre SLC. Yeah.
Manish, what are you going to go for?
Can I just about sneak in a Triumph Stag 69?
Oh, definitely. You get 5 of them.
Cool.
So that's I'm going to get a white Triumph Stag if one exists with a black interior. I know it's not going to work, but this is Goodwood. It just has to get me there and get me back. It's a great looking car. I think it's a great looking car. And in fact,
Wasn't there a private investigator called Hazel that had? Was
Hazel had one, but actually I have a better film reference for it. There's a film called Dracula AD 1972, and Dracula's disciple, whose name is Johnny Alucard. Alucard is Dracula, spelt backwards, played by Christopher Neame, plays a sort of very trendy 70s kind of posh boy type. And he has a fantastic Triumph Stag, and he has that whole sort of apartment in the Mews with sort of the greenhouse bathroom. It's a great car. Very, very 60s, very cool. 60s, early 70s. You know what else I'd like? If I could find a slightly minty one, I think probably be quite unusual. I'd love to get a Hillman Imp. I would love a little Hillman Imp.
Yeah.
It'd be gorgeous. I'd like that in white as well. I think we're doing white. I think that would be a great
option.
You've got some real overheating issues going on with these two car selections, mate.
Yeah.
I'm sure mechanically, exactly, they could show Lola up a bit.
I'm going to try and adapt my choices to the event. So members' meeting is a Goodwood event where I think you can turn up in more modern machinery and feel less self-conscious. So you should take advantage of that with this. So one of them's got to be pre-1970. My post-1970 will be my 16-valve Delta Integrale, because I think you can turn up to the members' meeting in Integrale and not feel that you've missed the dress code, because there are more modern cars there. So actually I think Integrale works. Yep. You'd probably find an E30 M3 that you could buddy up to in the car park.
Yes, yeah.
I've got 30 grand into that, maybe a bit more. the car that I really want to go to Goodwood in, and I've seen so many of them, and the people drive them look so joyous in them, is a frog-eyed Sprite. I think they look
lovely.
when I see two people, two heads bobbing down an A road and turning into Goodwood with a scarf flowing around, I think even the cynical me thinks this looks rather wonderful. And I think England today seems like a better place. So yeah, frog-eyed Sprite. I've never driven one. I'd love to have a go.
They're
They
lovely.
look fun.
Yeah, debumpered.
Oh, they're really good, and that pea green.
Oh yeah, and just with those, I mean, it's so anthropomorphic that it just looks like a little person, doesn't it?
It does.
It's a car with a person face. Let's move on to some music before I actually do die. I'm going to take my pulse in a minute. So I'm going to choose a piece of music first, which is way too 80s for everyone, but I listened to it in the car the other day and I loved it. Colonel Abraham's Trapped. What a tune that is. Go listen to that. That is 80s synth pop at its finest. Colonel Abraham's Trapped. Do any of you three remember that or not?
No.
Vaguely.
Oh, please. It's wonderful. Okay. Manish, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for Tina Turner's You're Simply the Best.
There you go. Chris Cooper?
Yesterday, when I was driving back down the road, I asked Spotify for Poodle Rock. You know Poodle Rock?
Yeah.
80s stuff, American bands, lots of long, big perm hair, Aerosmith, Def Leppard, Van Halen, Journey, blah, blah, blah. And then I remembered, and thinking of Lando, Eminem's sample of Aerosmith's Dream On, Sing for the Moment, and that video. Lando, before you go out in Jeddah this weekend, watch Eminem, Sing for the Moment, bust it this weekend.
Neil?
Not to America for 24 hours, and I only listen to my little music thing called American Driving Music because I've rented a car. I'm driving from Orlando to Miami, and my first song on that whole little compendium that I've done is Chelsea Morning by Neil Diamond.
Oh,
And when I've plugged that into my little Spotify thing in my car, and I just press play, and I love Neil Diamond's voice. It reminds me of my mum and the 70s and Bracklesham Bay.
Safe travels, Neil, in America. Safe travels, Manish in London. Safe travels, Chris, in somewhere near the M25. And I'm going to go and lie down because I feel like something walked up. So thank you very much to my co-host, and we look forward to bothering your earlobes with car-based chatter next week. Bye-bye.